Five, four, three, two, one.
I'm really going to have to do something about this wire. I keep catching it every week. It's on the wrong side of my head somehow. Anyway, hello, willkommen, bienvenue, konnichiwa. It's time for the Armis Inquisition yet again, episode 175 on Sunday the 14th of March. I'm Amish Phil.
I'm Amish Man.
And I'm Amish Matt.
And tonight's guest is a US Air Force veteran, a retired Assistant Attorney General, and the author of two books, Incident at Devil's Den, and his new book, Devil's Den, The Reckoning. Terry Lovelace, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, it's good. I was saying before, we've been really looking forward to this because it's a fascinating story. And I was thinking also earlier, your story's probably not as well known this side of the pond and in Europe maybe as it is over in the States. So yes. I think it'd be a good way to sort of go through it. I think a good starting point would maybe if you go, tell us a bit about your background. And one of the things that's striking about your story is your credibility, if you like, as a witness. So tell us a bit about yourself to start with.
Sure. I graduated from high school in 1973 and enlisted in the United States Air Force for 6 years. I was a medic, an EMT, a first responder, whatever. I drove an ambulance. And I worked at Whiteman Air Force Base, which is still there today. It was a SAC base when I was there with nuclear ICBMs and B-52s armed with nukes. And today it's home to the B-2 bombers. I was there from 73 to 79. After my enlistment ended, I finished a undergraduate degree in psychology and a law degree from Western Michigan and made my career in the law. I was a civil servant. I was Assistant Attorney General for the U.S. Territory of American Samoa, South Pacific, which was a great gig and wonderful people. Samoan people are wonderful people. From there, I went to the state of Vermont, where I finished my legal career as state's attorney there in 2012 and retired. So I couldn't tell this story while I was in the legal community, certainly not while I was working for government. It would not have been accepted.
Yeah, Assistant Attorney General is quite a high-profile job, isn't it? It can be. Is the role of the Attorney General deciding which cases get prosecuted?
The Attorney General represents the state or the territory, in my instance. So there are, city and county prosecutors that handle their own cases. In cases involving state law or regulatory cases, which was my forte when I was in Vermont, I have some medical experience with legal medical matters. So I was on their board of medical practice where they regulate physicians, their licensing and that sort of thing.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a high status role. And is this part of the reason, I take it, why you sort of suppressed your story until later life?
It is. I never told a soul. My wife and I, she was with me then. We'll be married 47 years in March tomorrow, March 15th. Yikes.
Have you got anything?
I do. I have a trip paid for.
Oh, no, right. Okay.
I'm smarter than that, yeah.
So let's go to the story then. Lay it out for us what happened, Terry.
Sure. One brief comment. I would not have come forward with this story had it not been for a routine x-ray that I had of my leg in 2012, and they discovered some foreign objects in my leg. And you can see those x-rays. They're at terrylovelace.com. And that was the real motivation to come forward. Because that was validation that these things put their hands on me. when I saw the X-rays. So
you had no notion that there is any foreign bodies inside you?
I had no idea.
Right.
None. So now the camping trip in 1977, I had a friend, a guy I worked with, Tobias, and I worked together for 3 years. We worked the night shift in the emergency room from 11 o'clock till 8 o'clock a.m., 11 o'clock p.m., 8 o'clock a.m. And he came up to me one night and he said, "Hey, man, I got an idea. Let's go camping." And, I was a city kid. I had never been camping in my life. I knew he was a city kid. He was from Flint, Michigan. I suspected he'd never been camping in his life. So I'm like, man, what's up with this? Where did this come from? And he said, well, he knew that I was an amateur photographer. And I took a lot of photographs. I had a little dark room set up to develop black and white prints. And he says, think about this. He says, you can get some cool wildlife photos. And he wanted to go down there to watch the night stars, to watch the night sky with no light pollution. Because he was just fascinated with the night sky. He knew all the constellations. He could time satellites coming over. Anything space related, man, was his specialty. So, and I wish we'd had time to talk about that, because I'd like to know the origin of his fascination with space. Be interesting. So we drove down to Devil's Den State Park in northwestern Arkansas. And I've done some research, and it really is a spooky place with a kind of a scary background. Had I known the history of the place, I would not have gone.
Well, you would think so with that name, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a tip. Yeah. I thought, somewhere it got this name for some reason. That's the exact mental exercise I went through. And, lots of people have been found dead, gone missing. There are 2 Native American tribes that lay claim to that area. And I found the Kahino and the Caddo tribe. And I found a Caddo medicine woman who told me, quote, "That's cursed land. My people will not hunt, fish, or camp there. We'll transit through it. We'll cut across it. Wow. But we won't stay there because it's cursed." So we decided we weren't going to stay in a campground. We wanted to find, a nice spot. We wanted to be real outdoorsmen, right? Our first time out. We want to be, and we didn't want somebody camping on the right and left side of us. We wanted to be out by ourselves in the woods. So we trespassed across this chain in the road. And I was 22. Toby was 23. I thought, what's the worst they're going to do? Throw us out, right? No big deal. We're not going to burn a forest down or leave a mess. So we thought we were trespassing into like a nature preserve or something. And actually, the area where we stayed isn't even in Devil's Den State Park. It's federal land owned by the Bureau of Land Management, at least to some individual.
Right.
And it's a strange. Anyway, I'll get to that. We drove around, and it was weird. My friend Toby is navigating, and we found our way to this plateau, and it was triangular in shape. It's still visible from Google Earth, and it's elevated. It's a plateau that's about level with the treetops all around.
Wow!
And it was cool. It was absolutely perfect for camping. So we set up a little campsite, and, we did all the fun stuff you do when you were camping, because, hey, it was all new to us. You barbecue hot dogs and all that stuff, and we did all that stuff. It was fun. And about 9 o'clock that evening, we're kicked back, laying on these inflatable air mattresses, and just having a pleasant conversation. And we have a campfire between us and a tent in back of us. And I had noticed that just maybe 45 minutes earlier, we were having trouble communicating. I had to raise my voice to be heard because the noises from the forest, things like crickets and tree frogs and stuff that makes noise at night in the forest, was so loud. And that went silent. And I know that sounds cliche. It sounds like out of a horror movie or something, but I swear to God, it's true. It really happened. And, it wasn't only that it was quiet, it was still. I mean, we'd had a nice breeze we enjoyed, and that quit, that died. And it unnerved me, and I asked my friend, like he's going to know, I said, hey, man, is this normal? It just feels weird. It did. It unnerved me. And he blows it off. He's like, yeah, don't worry about it. He said, the bugs, they'll come back. Nothing to worry about. So, we kept talking, and but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. And then I noticed that he's fixated, looking at the horizon. He has his head turned to the left, looking toward the west. And he asked me, he said, hey, Terry, were those lights there before? And I don't recall any lights. I mean, we were in a remote area of the forest. There were no lights anywhere. So I couldn't see what he was looking at because his torso was in the way. I had to stand up and take a step back. And sitting on the western horizon, actually above the western horizon, there were 3 bright little stars in a perfect triangle. And it looked unnatural. My friend knew the night sky. He knew that they weren't a constellation. They weren't. They were artificial in some way. They weren't a natural formation. Mm. And we're discussing what it could be. And I said, hey, man, that could be an aircraft of some kind headed directly toward us, and we won't be able to perceive its motion until it moves by a degree or two. And he's like, okay, so we're watching, and they rotated. They turned like they were on an axis, and they rotated about 120 degrees to the right. And what it did was that the triangle aligned itself with the base of the triangle, parallel with the horizon, with the apex pointed up. And it was too far above the horizon to have been lights from a parking lot or a train or something like that. This was definitely in the sky. Yeah. And while we're watching, it started to rise. It took off and started slowly to climb. And as soon as it did that, I had this sensation. And I think this really speaks to the level of influence that these things can have over us, over people. I felt this sensation of calm wash over me. And all of that feeling of being unnerved and being anxious was all gone. And I felt weird. I felt almost disinterested. I mean, short of apathy, but I felt more like an observer than a participant in what was going on. I know that sounds strange, but
is that because it was so far away?
No, I think that's because of their influence on us. I think our responses were muted. We should have been, hey, look at that. We should have been, what is this thing? There should have been some dialogue between us. It was nothing.
So at that point, could you estimate how far the lights were away?
Many miles. I would guesstimate after seeing the size of it, it was many miles away. But it was steadily headed in our direction. Right. And it climbed until it reached what I call a ceiling, maybe 10,000 feet. And it leveled off. While it was in a vertical climb, it leveled off to a flat plane and stayed there for just a second, and then started a steady, steep dive into our direction. And we could see the apex of the triangle was pointed directly at us. We knew it was headed toward us. But we had no fear, no anxiety, not much of nothing, really. We're just watching this thing. And as it gets bigger, the points of light expand. And we could see, because there were 1 trillion stars out that night. It was a beautiful night. And the area inside this triangle was jet black, where there was like a light blue glow all around it from the starlight. So we knew we were looking at one solid object, not 3 objects moving in unison. Yeah. And it glided in and leveled off at about, I'm guessing, 5,000 feet over the plateau, and then cruised in and came to a stop over the meadow where we were camped. We were offset just a bit. It wasn't directly over our heads. And I would estimate, and I think it's very close, about 3,000 feet over our heads. If you'd like to see a drawing of this, I did one, and it was done contemporaneous with the event. I did it in August of 1977. And it's at terrylovelace.com.
Right.
But we watched this thing, and what happened was it shined a light down from underneath this thing in center. There came a beam of light, and it was a visible white light, like a high power searchlight that cuts through fog. You can see a visible column of white light.
Yep.
That's what this was like. Only it was about 6 inches in diameter, but it was a perfect column, and we could follow it with our eyes all the way up to the ship. And we heard no noise whatsoever. It was absolutely quiet. The lights on the tips of the triangle were still lit, but they had dimmed. And this light came down and hit our campfire, right in the dead center of our campfire, and stayed there for about 60 seconds. And then just like someone hits a switch, it just turned off.
Right.
And then immediately afterward, there came this like laser beam. I mean, in 1977, lasers were kind of a new thing. I mean, I'd seen them on television. I knew what they were. I'd never seen one in real life before. But from the same area underneath this thing in center, there came a laser beam about the diameter of a pencil. And it was a bluish purple in color. And it would land at some point in our campsite for like 1/10 of a second, and then reappear in another place. And then in this manner, it just danced all around the campsite. And it struck me in the chest a couple times. I didn't feel a thing, never felt a thing. I know it struck my friend. It struck us and all the things that we brought there. It
Right.
struck the cooler, it struck his backpack, it struck my car, it struck the tent. So all the things that we brought with us, all the things associated with us, including ourselves, this laser beam struck. And I felt like this thing's scanning us, it's checking us out.
And rather than floating around like a searchlight, this was like strobing in and out.
Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly right. And we still had that weird, muted emotions. And, there was no conversation between us. The only, and that's unusual. The only comment, my friend made a comment like, it's really moving now or something, inane like that. And then we're just watching this thing. And these lights, the laser lights lasted maybe 3 minutes. And then like someone hits a switch, it turns off. And we're sitting there, and it is so quiet. I mean, it's like sitting in a sound booth. That was the vibe. And all of a sudden, we both transitioned from where we had been sedated before. Suddenly, we're sleepy. And all I wanted to do was close my eyes and go to sleep. And I think that was also their influence, of course. We had worked the night shift for 3 years. This is 9 o'clock at night. I mean, this was not, we're 22 and 23 years old. 22 and 23-year-olds don't enjoy a nap. We want to be doing stuff, right? Yeah. So I picked up my air mattress, and Toby did the same thing. He stood up and he said, "Show's over," which I thought just an odd comment. And I didn't reply. He went over and he threw his air mattress into the tent and fell on top of it. And I followed suit. I threw mine in the tent and fell on top of mine. And as soon as my head hit that plastic inflatable air mattress, I was out. And I wasn't asleep. I think I was unconscious. And that's when they took us, while we were in this unconscious state.
So you went and got your air mattress and went to sleep while this thing was still over the plateau.
hanging over us by 3,000 feet. Yes.
It sounds unbelievable because, doesn't it? You would think it would be the last thing you would do would be to take your eyes off the thing.
That's right. Yeah.
That's amazing.
We were under its influence. Clearly, there's no doubt in my mind. And we woke up some hours later. Both of our watches, we wore wind-up mechanical watches, which were kind of the standard of the day, and they were integral to the job of being an EMT or a medical technician. And both of our watches had stopped at 2:41. I mean, a minute apart. Toby's was 2:41, mine was 2:40 on the nose. Those watches never worked again. So we had no idea what time it was. I mean, afterwards we figured out that we woke up about an hour before sunrise. I woke up because of these flashing lights through the tent. And through the canvas of this tent, there came these incredibly bright flashes of white and yellow light, and sometimes a little orange and a little greenish maybe, but predominantly white and yellow. And they were at odd intervals, and they were just incredibly bright. And they would last for a millisecond and light up the inside of that tent, just like insane. And I woke up, and you know what I'm thinking? I don't have my wits about me when I wake up, and I'm thinking, where am I? Oh, yeah, we're camping. That's right. And I see these lights, and I'm thinking, some park ranger's truck with some kind of overhead flashing lights, maybe, trying to think of some kind of logical explanation. Yeah. And then I also heard this weird noise. It was I refer to it as a droning noise. And what it was like a mechanical sound. If you've ever stood next to a large piece of industrial machinery or like a diesel locomotive that's idling, there's this sound, and it doesn't hurt your ears. It's not like it's so loud, but you can feel it in your chest. It's powerful, like a bass speaker at a concert. You can feel it.
Yep.
And I sat up, and I saw that my boots had been unlaced. Because I didn't bother to undress. I left my boots. I was wearing combat boots, T-shirt, jeans. I sat up, and I saw that my boots had been unlaced almost all the way down. And that didn't frighten me, but it puzzled me because I would never have left them like that. The military, they teach you to take care of your feet. So, I mean, my boots would have been laced up. My boots would have been off, one or the other, but not like this. So I'm annoyed. And I pull them off, and I find out my socks are on sideways. And I didn't know then that we had been undressed and they had redressed us.
Oh, my word.
So I put them on correctly. I laced them up. I turned my attention to my friend. And in one of these brilliant flashes of white light, I could see that he'd been crying. He's crouched down on his knees, and he's looking through a flap in the tent. And Toby was black, and I could see against his dark skin the saline in the tears fluoresced with each flash of bright light. So he had a very clear tear track down the side of his face. It was very visible. And that scared me because I couldn't imagine what would make this man cry. And I asked him, I said, Toby, man, what is it? Is it park rangers? What's out there? And he just said, shh. They're still out there. And I'm like, who's still out there? And it's obvious he's not going to answer me. So I pull back my flap of the tent just a couple inches because now I'm scared. All that being semi-sedated, that stuff's all gone. Now I'm absolutely scared out of my wits. And I look out of this flap in the tent, and I'm seeing the metal in front of me. And here is this giant triangle that has descended from 3,000 feet, and it is now hanging 30 feet over the metal. And that's why these lights were so intense. And we were offset from it just a bit, but we could see the side of it and see the actual depth of it. And it was absolutely enormous. I mean, it looked like some kind of big medical building or office building. It was just huge.
Did you have any idea of like the texture or the finish? Was it like matte? Was it shiny? Was it rough, smooth?
It was matte black, and it had windows here and there, windows, like an apartment complex or something. And at the very top, the top of it curled outward a little bit, and there was a panel of glass that ran across the entire length of the structure. And it looked like an observation deck of some kind. And we could see shadowy figures moving around in back. We could never make them out. The second thing that I saw was what I took to be kids, maybe a dozen, maybe 15 children. And I asked my friend, I said, Toby, man, what are these kids doing out here in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of night? What's going on? And he said, Terry, man, those ain't no little kids. Look at them. They're not human beings. And he said, don't you remember? They took us and they hurt us. And as soon as he said that, I had flashes, just bits of memory from being inside that thing. And I've never had a clear linear memory of what happened to us. I just have bits and pieces of being inside this thing. But that, I was absolutely terrified. I was absolutely out of my wits with terror. And I saw these little guys walking around, and I'm afraid that we're going to cough or sneeze or something and draw their attention, and they're going to come over and do God knows what. But
these figures are still in the ship, not on the meadow.
No, they're walking around on the meadow outside.
Oh my God.
They are walking around. They're paired up in like twos and threes, and they're just meandering around this meadow. And it's not like they're looking down, looking for something. They're like walking around like tourists, just kind of looking around. And they were very unusual. They were all about the same height. I was a fair distance away, so I couldn't see them as clearly from there as I would like to have had seen them. But they were about 3, maybe 3.5 feet tall. They all walked with a very distinctive gait. They walked as if their legs had been hinged to move backward with each step, just maybe an inch or two. I know that's hard to visualize, but what it did was it gave the impression that when they moved their leg forward, they were like dragging their leg forward. A very strange walk. That's the best way I can describe it. We could see that they were gray. They were all gray. I didn't see any huge black eyes. So if they had eyes, they weren't exaggerated like you see in the motion pictures. But they walk with this distinctive gait, and their heads were large, disproportionate to their torsos. Their torsos were very tiny. Their limbs were disproportionately long compared to their torso and their overall makeup. And while we're watching these things walking around, another light clicks on. And this was another column of white light, only this was a broad column of light. I'm guessing it's going to be about 30 feet wide, because it was about the same length sideways as this thing was vertically above the meadow. And as soon as this light came on, they all, in unison, turned their attention toward this light. And it just started to meander over to it. They didn't run, they didn't hurry, but they all made a steady pace back toward this light. As they got there, we saw the first 2 little guys step into this light. And when they did, they pixelated out in the light. They just dissolved. And within about 20 seconds, they were gone. And then the next pair would step in, and then maybe a trio would step in. And same thing, 20, 25 seconds, they pixelate out and they're gone. So we watched until the last 2 stepped in. And once they were gone, this light shut down. And as soon as it shut down, that droning noise that we heard stopped also. And it was quiet again. And we watched this thing take off. And it didn't take off like a rocket ship, it just lifted off like a hot air balloon, slowly. And as it went up, the higher it got, the faster it went. And we saw it move from 3 points of light to a single point of white light, and then it was gone.
Straight up.
Straight up, yes. And I was terrified. We were both like 2 terrified little kids. I mean, I was afraid. I was in favor of staying inside the tent until daytime. and my friend wanted to leave. I felt that we would be vulnerable in the 60 feet that we'd have to run to the car. And I didn't want to be out there and be vulnerable. All I had over my head was a piece of canvas, but I felt like it provided me with cover. And I didn't want to be out there. And, to this day, I will not cut across a piece of open ground. I will walk 1.5 miles around if I have to, but I will not be out in the open alone. I'll have a panic attack. I feel vulnerable.
Wow.
So what happened after that then? How did you get back to the base and stuff?
My friend said, look, we got to go. He said, we're not going to stay here till daylight. We're going to go. Let's go now. Mm-hmm. And I said, all right, we did the 1, 2, 3 go thing. And we darted to the car and we got in the car and we realized we were in a lot of pain and they had hurt us. I was burnt. I had like the worst sunburn I'd ever had in my life. But I had it everywhere. And I never took off my shirt or my pants. Or I never took off my boots for that reason matter. But I was burned under my arms, the soles of my feet. I mean, I was burned everywhere. And I never blistered, or never, my skin never peeled. But it was a very painful burn. And I also had what doctors call a flash burn to my eyes. What it is it's essentially a sunburn to the cornea of your eye. And they call it a flash burn. It's what an arc welder would get if they didn't wear that hood over their face while they worked. And very painful. It feels, you're photophobic and it feels like you have sand in your eyes.
Mm-hmm. How long did those things last for?
My eyes cleared up in about 4 days. We were hospitalized when we got back to base. We both lived on base housing on the base itself. So we got back to base. And, we worked at the hospital. So we knew everybody there. And, medical people take care of their own. We were well cared for. And our wives both took us to the hospital. And whatever they did to me, they gave a double measure to my friend because he was hurt far worse than I was. Obviously, his skin didn't tan, but he was burned. And he was in more pain than I was. And we had an incredible thirst. I was so thirsty. As a matter of fact, that was our admitting diagnosis, was acute dehydration.
I was going to say, what did your colleagues at the hospital say when you turned up with these symptoms?
They said, what did you get into? How did you hurt yourself like this? And we had the most thorough medical exams, but they separated us. And at the end of my exam, 4 people came into the room. It was the base commander, the hospital commander, who I knew well, and 2 guys in civilian clothing that I did not recognize. And they came in and they asked the doctor to excuse himself. And he walked out of the room and they shut the door to the exam room. And the hospital commander was the only one that spoke. And he said, Sergeant Lovelace, you're to have no contact with Sergeant Tobias in any way, shape, or form. He says that means not verbally, not in writing, not by telephone. You're not to try to communicate with him through any third party. You're not to give him anything. He's not to give you anything. If you happen to run across him while you're in the base exchange shopping, you're to immediately turn around and walk in the opposite direction. And on and on and on with this bizarre no contact order. And he said, and Sergeant, if you disobey this order, there'll be consequences. Do you understand me? I understood consequences. But the reasoning, the rationale behind it, no, I didn't understand at all. Mm-hmm. But they knew. Somehow they knew. And I know that they knew.
How far is sorry, Terry, how far is the base from the plateau where you camped?
6.5 hour drive. So a couple 100 miles.
Right.
Yeah. And here's how I know that they knew. My second night of hospitalization, I knew I was going to be going home the next day. And I had they gave us both 30 days off duty to recover. And that evening, my night nurse came in with an injection for me. And 2 guys followed her into my room. And they were dressed in blue business suits, with a tie. But these guys were cops. They were policemen. They had, their suit coats were open, and I could see they were wearing a shoulder holster with a sidearm. And they carried themselves with that air of authority like a police detective does. I don't know how to explain that. I had never had any experience with the police before this, so this was kind of new to me. And I'm wondering, why are these guys wanting to talk to me? What did I do? And then I thought, well, maybe we did burn down the forest or something, So she came over to give me the injection, and this older guy, maybe in his 50s, said, if that's going to sedate Sergeant Lovelace, it's going to have to wait because we need to ask him some questions. And they pulled out their credentials, and they showed her badges. They were from the OSI. The United States Air Force has security police, and then a special branch within the security police is called the Office of Special Investigations, and they're the investigative branch of the Air Force. So they showed me their credentials. The older guy was a major, the younger guy was a captain. The older guy did all the talking. He read me my rights under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and that scared me.
What's that? How does that differ from your normal rights that you read when you're arrested?
They're a little bit different under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, but they're basically giving you the right to counsel, the right to remain silent, those basic rights that we take as fundamental, very similar to yours. Our legal system is based on yours. Yeah. And that's what they taught me at school. So read me my rights. And, I didn't have the benefit of a law degree. I didn't have the benefit of life experience. I'm 22 years old. I'm thinking if I protest, I'm going to look guilty of something. I don't know what. So I thought cooperation is the best thing I could do. And he asked me a ton of questions. What were you doing down there? Now, when we left, we didn't take anything with us. We left the cooler, the tent, the air mattresses, everything. We left there. And my friend's backpack had his address on it and phone number, and he lived on the base. So if the park rangers found that would have been an easy trail back to discover that we were actually airmen from Whiteman Air Force Base. And that's an assumption on my part. But this guy said, the park rangers found your camp, and it looks like you're set up to come back. And he says, I just curious, what do you guys got going on down there? What are you guys doing down there that you made this little camp? And, you trespassed on the federal land. That's a crime. Did you know that, Sergeant? And I said, sir, look, we had no intention of hurting anything or making a mess. We were just looking for a nice place to camp. And he proceeded with this interrogation. And, afterward, years later, I worked as a prosecuting attorney for a while and became familiar with police interrogation techniques. And, in retrospect, I could realize that what he was doing was all theater. It was pretty much for intimidation. And he succeeded because I was thoroughly intimidated. And he asked for permission to search my car. He asked for permission to search my home. And I gave it to him. And I thought, what? I don't have anything to hide, And so this lasts for about 35, 40 minutes. And the captain left. And it's just me and this major in this room. And this major was from Alabama or Mississippi, Louisiana, somewhere in that Southern American region. And he had a very distinctive accent. If you've ever spoke with Calvin Parker, or heard Calvin Parker speak about his abduction experience. He's very much like Calvin's. And he shut the door to my room, and he held his hand against the door, and my bed was right next to the door, and he leaned over, and he whispered in my ear. He said, son, I know, and you two knuckleheads stumbled onto something while you were out there, and I think you know what I mean. And I didn't answer him. I didn't know how to answer him. Toby and I had made a pact on the way home that we would never mention the UFO. We weren't going to lie to anybody, but we would tell them And it's the truth. We went to bed. We were feeling kind of funny, maybe 10 o'clock at night. We woke up early, felt worse. We felt so bad, we just drove back home. Didn't care about leaving this stuff there. It was all expendable. So when I told him that, he said, I don't believe you. So because I didn't answer his question, he kind of gets a little more, his tone gets a little more firm, and he says, oh, yeah, he says, I know you know what I'm talking about. And he said, all I want to know is how many photographs of it did you take? And, without thinking, I blurted out, sir, I didn't take a single picture of it. And he just smiled. And he says, son, I'm going to need your camera and your film anyway. So I think they thought that I had a 36 exposure black and white roll of film of this thing. That's what I think. And, the truth is, a lot of crazy things happen. I left my camera at home. Now, my friend Toby had his camera, and it was in a backpack sitting right next to him while we're watching this thing glide in, and, we're watching the whole thing. And the thought of taking a photograph never crossed my mind. It never crossed Toby's mind. And again, I think that's influence on some level, because if you've ever known anyone who really, really, really is into photography, you know how annoying they can be because they want to photograph everybody and everything. Yeah. And I was like that. But the idea of taking a photograph of this thing never crossed my mind. And I don't understand that. So, yeah, they knew what we saw. There's no question in my mind that they knew.
And the orders to stay away from Toby, were they time limited?
No, they were not. They were open-ended. Now, what they did was we could have no contact with one another. They transferred me to a supply group for a little while, and they cut him orders to go to Japan. I mean, at light speed. It was a couple of weeks and he was gone. And, something had changed. When we went through this event, we came out of this different people. We were two different people than we were when we went down there. I think when we went down there, we were like a couple of kids. And we came back, we were absolutely adults. And it was a life-changing event. One of the odd things that happened was our relationship changed. I didn't want anything to do with this guy. And I couldn't process that. I couldn't understand it. I don't understand it to this day. But I found out that it's not that uncommon. There's a gentleman named Robert Hastings who wrote a famous book called Nukes and UFOs and Nukes, about military people on nuclear bases that see things, and how the forces in charge will separate those people and not let them hang together. But, we had a 6.5-hour trip back to base, and human nature, two people go through this life-altering, unimaginable event. We should have been debriefing it. We should have been talking about it. We should have been, man, did you see what I see? And what were those things? And we should have been back and forth, engaging in that, validating each other's experience. And we didn't do that. I think the only conversation we had on the way back was our agreement that we would not tell them that we saw a UFO.
Wow. I mean, could you put that down to shock?
No, I don't think so.
Because that's my, when you were describing as the thing came, sort of that calmness that came over you as you first saw the thing approaching, and the sort of mental attitude, that the first thing that comes into my mind is like, it's shock. This thing is unnatural that's approaching. It's almost like a helplessness, some sort of fear response, but you feel that it's something external.
Absolutely do. It's not... I studied psychology for 4 years, and I understand a little bit about, fight or flight, our human reaction to perceived existential threat of some kind. And, also there's that need as human beings, I think, to to debrief, to talk about it, to each one validate the other person's experience and bolster. Yeah, you really saw that, man. That really happened. Mm. And I saw Toby one more time. And even though we were ordered to have no contact, and even though my feelings about him had changed somewhat, I did want to say goodbye to him because he was going to be gone. He was going to Japan. So we're coming home from the grocery store, and we both live on base just a few blocks from one another. And I asked my wife, I said, swing by Toby's house. I want to run in and say goodbye to him. She was driving. And she said, Terry, don't mess with these OSI people. They scare me. I'm like, I know. They scare me too. But, I'll be in there 4 minutes. I just want to shake the guy's hand. And I thought that by doing this, I could come to some kind of closure with this thing and get some level of peace. But it didn't work out that way. She stopped the car and I ran up to the door. Now, this is the same doorway I've walked through 100 times before. And I did what I usually do, and that was that I knocked 3 times on the door real loud, opened the door because it was never locked. And I said, hey, guys, it's me. And his wife walked by me, and they were moving. They were boxing up things, getting ready for their relocation. And she walked past me with a hard look and said, you're not supposed to be here. And here this woman, she and my wife were best of friends. This woman, 6 weeks earlier, we sat down and laughed and, we were friends. And I said, look, I'm not here for a confrontation with anyone. I just want to say goodbye to Toby and wish you guys well. And Toby had heard our conversation. As he came out of his bedroom and walked up the hallway, and he was a wreck. I know he was moving, and I could cut him some slack for that. But he was always very meticulous about his appearance. He was the guy who always had his hair cut within regulation. He always had on a starched uniform and always had his shoes shined. And I was the slob, but he was just absolutely everything had to be just so. And he walked out of the bedroom and his hair was all wonky and he hadn't shaved. And he was wearing dirty, his T-shirt was dirty, his pants were dirty, he was barefoot. And he walked up to me and it felt uncomfortable to see him again. I thought it would feel natural, but it didn't. It felt uncomfortable on some level. And he walked up to me, and Toby was about 6 inches shorter than I am. And he looked up at me and he said, it happened, didn't it, Terry? And I said, yes, my brother, it really happened. And you're not losing your mind. It really happened. And I'm looking down at him, and his eyes are bloodshot, and I could smell liquor on his breath. Now, this is a guy, we played cards together, we'd barbecue, I never knew this guy to drink more than a can of beer, maybe a can and a half. He's not a drinker. But this wasn't beer, this was liquor of some kind. And when I told him that it really happened, he said, yeah, but why us? And I broke my gaze with him. I looked down at my shoes and I just felt panicked. And I said, man, I don't have an expletive clue. And I ran out of the door and got back in the car and felt very unsettled for a couple of hours. And it wasn't the peace that I'd hoped it would be.
Was that the last contact you had with him?
That was the last face-to-face I ever had with him, yes. He had a very hard go of it. He and Tammy ultimately divorced. She moved back to the States with their children. And some years later, she got a hold of my wife. And she said that she and her husband were going to be driving through Michigan near Detroit and asked us if we'd like to get together. Toby's ex and her new husband. And my wife said, yeah, that'd be great. Let's all get together, talk about old times, bring pictures of the kids, right? So they stopped by our house and we went out, we had a nice dinner. And, I wanted to talk about Toby. That's what I wanted to talk about. And this was a little bit awkward because here's her new husband. So But I danced around the subject as well as I could. And I said, so, and she told me that Toby was discharged early. She's not sure of what the circumstances of his discharge was, but he was discharged from the military early and went back to live with his father in Flint, Michigan. And she was living in the Los Angeles area in California. And she had custody of the two kids. And she said that Toby, he didn't go to bars. He didn't really drink during the daytime. But she said that when nighttime rolled around, he would just pound liquor, maybe an hour, 2 hours before bedtime, just pound alcohol. And I could relate to that. I had my struggles too. And, sleep was hard to come by, still is. When you're asleep, you're vulnerable. When you shut your eyes, that's when the monsters could come in, right? And I still sleep with a light on.
Wow. This is heavy, Terry.
Yeah, it is.
One thing I wanted to ask you, I don't know if there's any meaning to this, but you described the meadow, the plateau on the meadow as being triangular.
Yeah,
and the ship, if you like, is triangular. Is that significant, do you think?
Yes, I think that's significant. And what I think is very significant is that, I never bothered to look for this meadow because I just made the assumption that there would be 40-year-old mature trees all over it. Because unless somebody goes up there and cuts the grass, there are going to be 40-year-old mature trees.
This is afterwards. Looking for the meadow afterwards.
This was in 2017 when I was writing the book. I didn't bother. I talked to some people down there in the area. There were some strange stories about some weird disappearances. And let me know if we have time, and I'll go into a couple of those. But the meadow, like I said, is located on federal land. And it's still just a dirt road. It's not paved. But the top of the meadow, I had a picture from Google Earth that I put on Facebook, and a friend of mine down in Alabama who's a landscaper blew this image up and sent me a message back and said, this land is, somebody cuts the grass up here. And he said, I can see tractor marks. He says, I know what he told me that they use a brush hog, a specific type of machine pulled by a tractor that cuts the grass. And I said, that's very interesting. So, the grass was cut when we were there. Why would the United States government pay to burn gas to cut the top of a plateau in the middle of nowhere that serves no purpose, that doesn't even have a paved road to it?
Yeah. One more thing about the plateau. Is it an equilateral triangle?
No, it's a rough triangle.
A rough triangle.
It's not a perfect triangle.
Now, when you talk about it being cut and maintained, well, it's maintenance, isn't it? That's maintenance.
It is indeed.
You've obviously thought about this. You must have some theories about why this plateau is maintained in this manner.
I do. I have some thoughts, but I'll stress that they're only assumptions on my part. But I kind of draw the conclusion that there is a landing pad. I believe it is. And I believe that's why they keep it cut. And I think they come and go from there. And I think our government knows about it. Certainly our Air Force knows about it. They knew what happened to me.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, the injuries you described, the sort of the sunburn and the damage to your eyes, as far as your research goes, is this a common thing?
I wouldn't say common.
Well, not common, but as far as these experiences
within the abductee world, yeah. What's interesting is in my first book, I put an email address in the back of the book, and I say, look, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, I can't give you legal advice or medical advice, but if you've had an experience and you'd like to share it with me, I would love to hear it. And I promise you absolute anonymity, unless you want to take your story to the world. And that's why I wrote the second book. Half of the second book is stories that these people mailed me. I've had to date over 1,600 emails from people. I expected to get 50 emails, you know? And people tell me most amazing abduction stories. And what I did was I tried to be analytical about this. And I took all of these experiences, and I had people email me with stories about UFOs, aliens, abductions, near-death experiences, ghosts, all kinds of things. And I tried to put everything into a category. And then once into a category, I grouped them all together, and I looked for commonalities between them all. And one of the commonalities in abductees is burning. It's not real common, but it's happened to other people. You know, one of the most common things I found surprised me, and that is that most of the people that have been abducted or had an intimate experience, let's say with a UFO or UFO inhabitants, tell me that between the ages of 4 and 5, they had a funny dream. And the dream may even be nonsensical, but they can remember this dream like it was yesterday, and they've remembered it all their life. And I say, you know, I ask every one of them, well, can you tell me about that Christmas? What did you get for Christmas? What did you get for your birthday? Where did you go on vacation with your family? They don't remember, but they can remember this stupid dream from when they were 5 years old. And those people, that seems to be a common quality. And I think these things are with you for a lifetime. I do. I don't think it's a one-on. I mean, you know, somebody might see a silver thing dart across the sky. But if they want to keep, we put these things in my leg. If they want to study you or follow you for a lifetime, you're their subject. You're tagged like a lion on a Serengeti plane. They got their thing inside you.
We haven't even got to that yet. I know, already, and we're already nearly an hour. But yeah, you just hinted at it there. The X-ray that you had in, was it 2017?
2012.
2012, sorry. And this was the push or the motivation, if you want to, because you've kept all this to yourself from 1977 through to 2012.
That's right.
And it was this X-ray that was the trigger. So we can't leave without talking about this, can we?
I can cut to the chase and tell you I can tell what's important.
Yeah.
And I couldn't bear weight on my right leg. And I told my wife, I got to go to the hospital. I got to have this checked out. Now, the things that are in my leg that you can see on the website, they're not related to that pain. That pain was caused by a benign, what's called a Baker's cyst. Nothing to do with baking. It's just, that's the name of it. And, you catch it like you catch a cold. It'll be painful to walk. Your knee will be painful for a couple of weeks. It always resolves on its own. It's not cancerous ever. It's just something you get, right? But then these things above my knee and below my knee, they called a radiologist down to look at them. And if you look at the structure above my knee, it's square, about the size of a fingernail, and it has 2 wires attached to it that run up my leg. And he says, I don't know what this is. But he says, it looks to me like you must have picked up something, transference through an automobile accident or some kind of violence for this thing to be buried this deep into your fascia and in your tissue. And he said, I bet you got a dandy scar. And I said, Doctor, I don't have a scar. And he says, you got to have a scar. He says, you can't violate the integrity of the skin and get something that buried this deep in your body and there not be a scar. And I said, well, take a look. And he did. He wanted to. And I took off my pants again, and he examined my leg under a light, and he was obviously shaken. And I said, well, doctor, let me ask you, if I may, how often is it that you see an object like this inside a human body and there not be a corresponding scar? And he said, never. He said, I've never seen this before. He said, I have no idea how this thing got into your body. I don't know what it is. I don't know how it got there. And then below my knee, he put that x-ray to the side and popped another x-ray in a view box. And he says, you've got some bones in your lower leg. And I thought, well, yeah, isn't it supposed to be that way? And, and he says, no, he says, and he pointed them out to me. And they're in the middle of my calf muscle. There is a floret pattern of bones arranged. And he said, I can tell they're bones. On x-ray film, I can tell that these things are the consistency of human bone. You know, they're not made out of plastic or something. They're bone tissue. And he said, you know, I've never seen a bone sprout in the middle of muscle tissue before, much less have half a dozen of them sprout and arrange themselves in a symmetrical pattern. He said, that's new. That's new too. So his parting words were, you have a very unusual knee, Mr. Lovelace. So
now, I mean, my obvious question to that is, I mean, have you not thought about going under the knife and having these things removed?
Oh, immediately. That is absolutely what I wanted to do, was to have them removed the sooner the better.
Because I imagine as soon as you were told this, you immediately put two and two together and thought, this is from 77.
Yeah, I did. Well, you know, it'll make more sense to tell you this. In 1979, I started running to kind of keep my weight in check. And I liked it. You know, I didn't run marathons or anything, but I'd run, 4 or 5 miles a day. But I ran nearly every single day, year round. And every time I would run, at about the 2 mile mark, I mean, give or take 50 yards, but right around the 2 mile mark, there was a spot above my knee and lateral toward the right that would go completely numb. And it was odd. It was numb and kind of itched, weird sensation. And I could take a safety pin and I could delineate the outline of the thing. It was a perfect little circle about an inch in diameter. And that numb sensation would fade about 30 minutes after my run and then be gone. So I asked my doctor about it, 1982, and she says, well, it sounds like some type of, quote, histemic reaction of some kind. She said, I wouldn't worry about it. If it doesn't affect your run, I wouldn't worry about it. So I didn't. But as soon as I saw that x-ray, I realized that spot on my leg that would go numb when I ran, that it was directly over that foreign object in my knee. So, and like I said, that validates they put their hands on me and did something more intimate than that to me. And I had trouble processing that. I had trouble living with that. So I wanted to see, I saw a surgeon right away. Mm-hmm. The problem that I had is that I have a cardiac history. I have a bad heart. I've had a couple heart attacks. I've had a bypass surgery. I had a stent put in 2011. So I go to the doctor, and in this country, the standard of care is this. If you've got something in your leg, like let's say, like the cardiologist told me, look, I've got 500,000 veterans out there that have pieces of shrapnel in their body from, Korea or Vietnam or Iraq or wherever. Oh. And they want that out of their bodies yesterday too. Mm. But she said the standard of care is, if it's been there a while, and it's not disturbing you, there's no signs of infection, which is not, she said, we leave it lay, because the risk of surgery and anesthesia, the risk of infection is greater than the risk of letting it lie. It's a risk versus benefit analysis. Mm. And they would not give me a clearance letter. Eventually they were removed, but they weren't removed. They were removed by ET.
Right.
In November of 2017, I woke up and I had a puncture wound at the top of my knee, and intuitively I knew that they came and taken this thing out of my leg. And I told my wife, I said, because I was talking to a surgeon down in Tijuana, Mexico, about removing it for me. So I think they wanted to come and take it back before it fell in the hands of a terrestrial scientist. I know that sounds far-fetched, but that's my belief.
And even more disturbingly, it's like they're monitoring your conversations and your movements about getting it removed.
That is disturbing. And I found a doctor of chiropractic. Do you have chiropractors?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do, of course. Okay. I found this doctor of chiropractic, a chiropractor who I went in to see him. And what I did was I took copies of my x-rays on copy paper. I had them rolled up in a tube in my hand. And I said, I need to see the doctor. I didn't have an appointment. He was busy. I waited like 45 minutes. I get in to see him, and he says, what can I do for you? I said, well, I got this puncture wound. It was weird. I had a deep puncture wound up on my thigh. It had a weird bruise pattern to it that didn't come out till about 36 hours later. It was on both legs. So I don't know if I had something in my left leg maybe I wasn't even aware of. But there was a puncture wound. It never bled, but you could see that it was deep. So he looked at this puncture wound and he says, how did you get this? And I said, doctor, well, I'm going to be honest with you. In 1977, while I was active duty in the United States Air Force, I believe that I was abducted by aliens while I was camping. And I believe that they put these things in my body while I was camping. And I think they came and they took their merchandise back last night. And he says, all right then.
Oh my God.
And he grabs me by the elbow and he's escorting me. He said, I don't think we can help you. He's escorting me toward the front door. But you know what? I know that this guy looks at 100 x-rays a week. So I took both pieces of paper in my hands and I did this and I held it up to his face. And I said, look at this. And he stopped in his tracks and he looks at them and he takes them from me. He says, follow me. And I went back into his office and he shut the door and must have locked it. People are knocking at the door. His phone is ringing. You know, he sits down at his desk and he puts the two copies on copy paper, the x-rays, puts them in front of me and says, tell me about these. Tell me the 3-minute story. Tell me about these. And I did. He said, I don't have x-ray equipment here. I use a freestanding radiology clinic about a mile down the road. And he said, I'll write an order for an x-ray. And he said, and I'll pay for it. And I'll read it for you. But you promise me, because I told him I was writing a book. He said, you promise me never use my name or my clinic's name. And I said, that's a deal, doctor. Yeah. I still have the x-rays to this day. So I went down, I got my x-ray. They gave me the film. I ran to the car, took them out, held them up to the sunshine. Sure enough, the thing above my knee is gone. Dropped him off at his office like he asked. And he called me back that evening and said, well, did you see your x-rays? And I said, yes, I did. It looks like they came and they got these things out of my leg. And he says, yeah, but did you see what they left you? And I said, no, I didn't see. I don't know how to read an x-ray. I didn't see anything else unusual. And he told me, and I saw it later. Matter of fact, he gave me the films. I'm in possession of them now. There are two tiny wires, about a centimeter long, parallel with one another. And you can see them very plainly looking at x-ray film. There's a picture of them in the back of my book, but it's kind of grainy. You really can't tell. But there are two tiny wires there right next to my femur. And I said, doctor, let me ask you this. You know, you obviously kind of have a clue what's going on here. And if these things are so smart, why would they be so inept as to leave these wires in my body? And he said, they're not inept. You don't get it. He says, they don't do anything by accident. He says, what they did was they just gave you an upgrade.
Oh, my God.
And he said, those two wires probably serve the same function as what they put in you in 1977. He said, look how far we've advanced since 1977. But he said, yeah, they're still following you.
Holy cow.
And I asked him, I said, how do you know this stuff? And he says, I just do. He wouldn't tell me. But, you know, he's either been taken or he's seen this phenomena in other people.
Hell's bells. You got a firmware update.
Yeah.
Well, Terry, we've blown past an hour already. We could talk to you all night about this because it's absolutely fascinating. But we're going to have to wrap up. we'll love to have you back later, further down the line.
Yeah.
And,
sure.
and carry on. The website, terrylovelace.com, isn't it?
Yes, and my books are on Amazon only. So.
On Amazon. Yeah, all the links will be in the show notes, Eavesdroppers, anyway. So if you want to check out Terry's website, his book, please do. It's a fascinating story. I encourage you all to do that. And we'll sign off this part of the show. Thanks so much for your time, Terry. Just hang on the line for us for 2 minutes while we play ourselves out, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Okay?
Of course.
Cheers. Don't touch that dial. Right, then we're back.
The dwarf, the cripple, and the mother of madness.
Ooh, that was intense.
We have to get Terry back for part 2.
I know. I had to cut it short because we blew over time and we rifled through it, but that was fascinating.
It was. We could have had another hour. Easy.
Peasy.
Easy peasy lemonade squeezy.
Yeah.
And it's one of those where, I mean, we could probably talk about that for another hour now and not do all the topical stuff because there was that much to go over.
Yeah.
But alas, time's of the essence. It's Sunday night.
Yeah, we've got things to debrief.
Yeah, please check out Terry's website. Link in the description and check the books out.
Yeah, Devil's Den.
Yep.
And Devil's Den Reckoning.
Reckoning, yeah. Yeah, Legit Bat. When we were talking to Legit Bat a couple of weeks ago, they were big fans of Terry's books, and I think they spoke to him as well. Yeah, it's brilliant. Right then, let's
housekeeping.
Some housekeeping.
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 Oh, this is a value for value podcast. If you find this podcast valuable, please consider returning some value. There's a myriad way of doing it. Leave us a review on iTunes. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the Odyssey channel. The Odyssey channel is now being updated. And we have 1 follower now.
Oh. So we're joining all the other alt-right lunatics on Odyssey then, are we?
Yeah.
One in Rome.
Well, it won't be long. Who knows when the YouTube axe will swing. We're lucky we're too small to be censored at the moment, because if we had 10,000 subs, we wouldn't have a YouTube channel, I don't think.
Too small to fail.
Jamie Deluxe, he's got his suspended, I think.
I don't know who that is.
One of the Union of the Unwanted.
Oh,
A big old guest for us.
Right.
He's a funny guy.
Good. Funny like a clown.
Like I amuse you?
Pardon? You're not learning your lesson.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Jingle requests is another way you can become... We need producers.
Yeah.
Right? Sign up to the YouTube... Sub on YouTube. Sub us on Odyssey. And watch the videos on Odyssey. Leave us reviews on iTunes. Follow us on social media. All the links are in the description. Buy some merch from the Amish loot chest.
Yeah.
Get you literally a communist hoodie.
I'm literally a communist.
Hoodie. Get your current great t-shirts.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh, jingle requests. You requested a jingle last week, Amish Matt.
I did, yeah. Just one off.
Yeah. Just for you, this is the extended cut.
Oh, good.
Chancellor Miracle. Slide back and open your withdrawal agreement. I'll probe your backstop. Give your backstop to me. Oh, it's getting so close. What's that? The ERG watchers. Yeah, I can see them on the back benches. That's It's so hot. Might have to use those fridges we've been stocked at. Maybe we can come to some sort of arrangement. Some kind of alternative customs arrangement. Because you're not scared of our beef anymore. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this might upset my constitution. We don't have one. Magna Carta. I know what you're trying to say. You're trying to say it's time for Brexit and it's Brexit time. It's Brexit. It's Brexit time. There's plenty more fish in the sea. Now we have our fisheries back. Just for you, that one, Armstrong.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
And
No, you took me right off Jarvis Cocker.
it's totally redundant as well. No, a shame.
Done and dusted.
Yeah, microwave ready. Brexit deal done. 3 minutes. You know,
Ping.
750 watts.
Radioactive men.
Yeah. So,
Asna!
I don't think have we. Oh, I'll tell you what. What's the last? Oh, send it. We haven't even done half the producer stuff. Fucking hell! Send us articles, news clips, videos, anything you find interesting that isn't getting any play on the mainstream.
Yeah.
Send it to the alt fellas, and we will amplify it. Anything else to become a producer? You will get a producer credit in the show notes and a special thank you from me.
Yeah. A mention on the show.
Yeah. Toss us a fucking coin.
Toss a coin to your witcher, O Valley of Plenty.
Because I'm literally a communist.
Toss a coin to your
I think you're hitting the point, Phil, that
Asna!
and it really bothers me because I believe I have an issue in this respect.
I have an issue in this respect. We don't get enough donations, so go to the armysinquisition.com and find the PayPal button there and sign up for a monthly or a one-off. If you're feeling flush.
Yeah.
All right.
Have you got a list of producers to read out then?
It's that time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, let's thank the producers for episode 175. They're just so amazing.
They are.
Yeah.
So amazing in their love.
Literally. The best mate.
I've been coming to terms with the fact that I am
Chest feeding.
Fucking vegan. The dwarf. The
Currant.
The grape. The
Homophobe. The wind.
The
Tosilizumab.
The fucking vegan. The
Lion dog face pony soldier.
The
I haven't even read it out, have I?
No, I was just wondering what was going on. We're doing it the other way around.
Fuck, 175. Simon Laurie King from the Slick Podcast. Gav Scott, Brendan of Ireland. Nomae NosNoj, Online Chemistry Tutor. And Mallen Baker. Thank you.
Hang on.
What?
What about Adam Curry from the No Agenda podcast?
The Podfather?
Yeah.
Oh, God, this is meta. This is like Inception.
Well, no, you've had direct contact with him now, so I think he should be named a producer as well.
He touched me.
He did, didn't he?
He touched me online, the Podfather.
He did.
But we've stolen our model and a half of our podcast off him.
That's fine. It's open source.
So we have to make him a producer on our podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Podfather. Sorry I'm a douchebag.
the dwarf, the currant, the grape, the
Homophobe. The wind.
the Tossilizu mab, the fucking vegan, the
Blind dog-faced pony soldier.
the asthma, the
Corn pop.
The number 11.
the
Slutty deposits.
the blind man, the
Communist.
On the horizon.
the cripple, and the mother of
Sonny Pickering!
From
Like a judgment day and terminating mode, like.
Yes!
I don't get it, never will.
Yeah, thanks for your support for another week. I don't think I've ever done that before.
Yeah.
I'm still floored. I think I'm still floored by Terry.
Yeah.
Terry Lovelace. I'm still processing his
Story. Yeah.
It's throwing me.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Right. What? Tossilizu mob. All right, then. Shall we move on?
COVID-19 news.
If you let it rip, they would get infected very rapidly and soon be filling up your hospitals and unfortunately your morgues.
Vaccination is going to be, in the end, your route to liberty.
I wish we could vaccinate against stupidity.
Tossilizu mab.
In the same ballpark as seasonal influenza.
From hell.
The magic vaccine.
It's not going to allow us to go completely back to normal.
Because we're getting bored and we want to have fun.
Read the standing orders. Read them and understand them.
Got a healthy chunk of COVID news to get through. Couple of serious things to get out of the way at the top.
Oh, what?
Really?
Yeah. Are we familiar with Geert van den Bosch?
No.
Not the holding midfielder for PSV Eindhoven.
No.
No, the vaccine scientist. He's come to my attention this week. He did an interview with Dan Gregory from the Pandemic podcast. Fellow Englishman who's been talking to scientists and stuff over the lockdown, and this guy Geert van den Bosch turned up, and he came to prominence this week. He's been writing open letters, and he's now done a short 2-minute video, like an open video to the WHO, which I shall play for you now.
Okay.
Dear colleagues at the WHO, my name is Geert van den Bosch. My background is veterinary medicine. I'm a certified expert in microbiology and infectious diseases. I have a PhD in virology, and I have a long-standing career in human vaccinology. I'm urging you to immediately open the scientific debate on how human interventions in the COVID-19 pandemic are currently driving viral immune escape. I'm urging you to invite me for a scientific hearing open to the public and to scientists all over the world on this very topic. Ignoring or denying the impact of stringent infection prevention measures combined with mass vaccination using prophylactic vaccines is a colossal blunder. Please do listen to my cry of distress, and let's first and foremost deliberate on a scientifically justified strategy to mitigate the tsunami of morbidity and lethality that is now threatening us. And let's meanwhile devise a strategy to eradicate the steadily emerging highly infectious variants. On behalf of humanity, I sincerely thank you for considering my call.
So he's worried about a super strain, effectively, rising as a result of vaccines. So sort of connecting that back to superbugs and the use of antibiotics.
If you
parallels with that.
If you check out the pandemic podcast interview, I think it's about an hour that I watched. It's quite technical, goes into great detail, and he explains the situation. The cliff notes, bottom line is, mass vaccination during a pandemic, particularly with prophylactic vaccines, will cause catastrophic consequences, force mutations, drive immune escape, which will cause the mutations to increase transmissibility and lethality. They'll be more dangerous to young people, and also the vaccine will compromise innate immune responses in those who are vaccinated. So it's technical and long-winded, but it's pretty alarming. But I'm going to put the link in the show notes for anyone who wants to watch it. He's put a lot of open letters on LinkedIn, and he's alarmed, essentially, that by doing a mass vaccination campaign during a pandemic, we're going to force mutations that is going to make this thing, it's going to make last year look like a walk in the park. I'll just give you a bit of his background, because, you know, most people have never heard of this guy. He got his PhD, his MD in 1983. I'll just give you the bits of his CV that I pulled from LinkedIn. Research scientist in virology, immunology and molecular biology at the Robert Koch Institute, 87 to 90. That's like the German equivalent of the CDC. Senior research scientist and head of environmental virology at the University of Hockenheim, 90 to 94. Adjunct professor of environmental virology and zoonotic diseases at the University of Hockenheim, 97 to 2000. Then he goes into the private sector. Senior project leader in adolescent vaccine projects, GlaxoSmithKline, 98-2001. Head of adjuvant technologies and alternative deliveries R&D, GlaxoSmithKline, 2001 to 2006. Then he moves to Novartis, vaccines and diagnostics, 06 or 07. Director of research program and head of adjuvants. Then that's at Solvay Biologics. And then he goes global project director of influenza vaccines at Solvay, another pharma company, 2007-8. Then he goes Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, 2008 to 2011. Senior program officer in global health and vaccine discovery. Then he goes to Gavi, that's the Global Vaccine Alliance. What did he do? The program manager, 2015, 2016. Then he goes to Univac, Chief Innovation and Scientific Officer. And then he becomes Head of Vaccine Development at German Centre for Infection Research, 2017 to 2018.
Quite an illustrious career, and then he was touched by Dr. Bill, and he might have gone off the rails.
Well, he started in academia. Then he went to Robert Koch, which is like a national level German institute. Then he goes into the private sector, works for 3 big pharma companies. Then he goes global with Bill and Melinda and Gavi. You would think he knows his onions, this guy. But I thought it's just important to get it out there because, you know, this sort of information tends to be suppressed. If it contradicts WHO guidelines, it will be removed from YouTube.
I think what he's saying is broadly correct in that any virus is going to work to, or not work, any virus is going to go through some changes that will cause challenges for any kind of limited technology that we develop to hit whatever strain we're focusing on. And that's why there's a different flu vaccine every year.
Yeah, I mean, part of the outcome, as he sees it, is that it'll wipe out innate immunity, and therefore, once you've had the vaccine, you'll be dependent on getting the next vaccine every 6 months or 12 months, whatever.
Well, if you're if you get a new strain of virus and your immune system works to eradicate that, that's where you develop your innate immunity anyway.
Yeah, but you're getting the vaccine instead.
The flu vaccine every year, and if I got the flu, I would either die or not die. And if I don't die and I recover from it, I am immune to that strain of flu. That's not to say that there's another strain of flu that's going to come along the next year, and I'll get flu again, and it might be even worse.
You need to, I think, I'm not an expert in virology, so I can't sort of say in detail how he explained it. It sort of made sense as I was watching it, that the way the vaccines work provides it's once you've had that vaccine, that becomes your automatic response rather than your innate immunity. He says that the vaccination will outcompete your innate immune response, basically. I think I'm wording that right. So therefore your innate immune response is removed. And so then you will be reliant on the spike protein immunity or whatever.
No, I don't agree. I think the vaccine would trigger, or is designed to trigger an immune response. Your antibodies don't stick around in your body forever.
Hang on. This is why he says the problem is doing it in the middle of a pandemic. So the chances are that a lot of people are going to pick up the infection immediately before and after the vaccination, and this is part of the problem. You've got to watch it. I can't explain it. I've just read out his fucking laundry list of credentials. I can't argue on his behalf.
No.
You know, it's there. If anyone wants to watch it, they can watch it. And, they can write him off or take him seriously. It's, come to your own conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to get it out there. Serious thing number 1. Serious thing number 2.
He was at Novartis when I was there.
Right.
Interestingly.
What was his role there? Novartis.
Adjuvants.
He was head of adjuvant technologies and alternative deliveries R&D.
So adjuvants are additional chemicals that strengthen the immune response that's triggered by a vaccine.
Yeah, I'm not sure adjuvants are used in the...
I don't think they are.
No, I don't think they are. But anyway. Right, next subject, blood clots. We played a clip of Sukarit Bakdi earlier in the year, who was the virologist. I think he was attached to Mainz. Is it pronounced Mainz, the city?
Mainz.
Maybe. Somewhere in Germany. And he was calling into question like the PCR stuff and what have you. But I've got him on this issue of blood clots because we know this week, was it the 12th? That a lot of European countries sort of have paused the AstraZeneca vaccine, haven't they? Because of a thing of they're concerned about blood clots.
Pulmonary embolism.
But what's
thrombocytopenia?
Yeah, that's the one. So that was I think that was maybe the 11th or the 12th of March. But anyway, on the 1st of March, Sukarit Bakdi sends a private letter to the EMA on behalf of a group of doctors called Doctors for COVID Ethics, requesting to halt the vaccine rollout due to a potential problem with blood clots. Mm-hmm. A week later, on the 8th of the 9th, after receiving no response, they made the letter public. And he also released this video that I've got a couple of clips from. So, clip 1 will give you an idea of what their issue is.
Anyone with a medical education who has also studied the composition and action mechanism of the vaccines must realize that there's every reason to expect grave side effects. Once the vaccines enter the bloodstream, which they will remain entrapped there and will enter the cells that line the blood vessels and induce these to produce the virus protein. 2 dangerous things must then be expected to happen. Firstly, many copies of the virus spike will appear on the cell surface. These may directly bind and activate blood platelets, which will trigger blood clotting. Secondly, the cells producing the spike protein may be attacked by our own immune system because the immune system is trained to recognize and destroy cells that produce the virus. Damage to the blood vessel lining must be expected to cause the blood to clot as well. The effect is likely magnified in individuals receiving their second vaccinations, as well as in patients who have been infected with any coronavirus shortly before or after vaccination. This may well have contributed to the observed clusters of deaths in senior homes, and there have been case reports of severe illness and deaths occurring in young and middle-aged persons because of profound disturbances in blood clotting.
So 2 issues. He's got the blood clotting issue that they raised, and also the enhanced immune response issue, potential issue.
He's talking about mRNA vaccine here, isn't he? Where it's triggering the cells to produce the spike proteins.
Yeah, but the AstraZeneca works in a similar manner. It does. I mean, it was sold to us that AstraZeneca was the traditional vaccine. It ain't. Mm. It's still telling your cells to produce the spike protein, just does it in a different way. The only traditional vaccine is the J&J.
And the Russian one.
And Sinovac and Sputnik, yeah. Yeah, so, I don't know. Anyway, here's what he wants done about it.
Let us begin together with a challenge to the medical regulators to release the bold figures of the numbers of people.
This is cute. Listen to this. The numbers of people
who have died within 28 days of receiving a COVID-19 vaccine. We, the people, have a legal and ethical right to be informed about the risks of any medical intervention, including risks that result from missing evidence, and a right not to be experimented upon.
I mean, I've brought up this logical fallacy before, that we record COVID deaths as someone who's died within 28 days of a positive COVID death. But with vaccine, you have to provide correlation. You have to provide causation. There are 2 different mechanisms at work. So I thought it was quite funny. He said anyone who's died within 28 days of a vaccine, we want the bold numbers for that. I mean, it would kind of put the COVID thing into perspective, I guess, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Our lowest figures today, 52 deaths recorded today.
Nice.
Within 28 days of a PCR positive. And just to put that in perspective, over the last 28 days, there's been about 20 million tests.
Jeez.
Really?
52 people have died out of 20 million tests.
That's false positive and negative tests as well, isn't it?
Oh, it's all positive tests. I mean, that's how we record deaths, PHE. 28 days of a positive test, 52 deaths. And over the last 28 days, we've had 20 million tests. So
sorry, you saying you've had 20 million positive tests over the last 28 days?
No.
It's just that's what I mean. So there's positive and negative results in there, isn't there?
Yeah. Tests carried out.
What's the case? It's a case demic now. What are the cases? 1,000.
3,000 or 4,000 maybe.
Is it? Right.
What's happened to the fucking Tosulizu Not even about that anymore, are we?
What was that one again?
You're in trouble in hospital, isn't it? It's to reduce your time in ICU.
Yeah.
So I guess there's less people there.
Yeah.
I just found it interesting that he came out with this earlier in the week, and then soon afterwards, half a dozen European countries and Thailand have paused AstraZeneca.
Yeah, Ireland paused it today.
Yeah.
Have they?
I've seen that, yeah.
Haven't the EU got a limited supply of AstraZeneca vaccine?
Limited supply of everything. Every vaccine, haven't they? Yeah, Italy blocked the exportation to Australia, didn't they, of some AstraZeneca?
Yeah,
I think that was this week.
Mm-hmm.
The WHO's set up an expert advisory committee, and that's currently looking at the AstraZeneca vaccine.
For clotting.
Sorry?
For the clotting issue.
Yeah, on this issue, yeah.
I mean, there's some wacky records in the yellow card figures for things that have been recorded as a an injury or event as a result of having a vaccine. There's loads of mad stuff on there. 274 deaths, I think, so far. But they record things like someone got a bite injury after having the vaccine. So that was recorded in the yellow card system. I don't understand how that works, but...
28 days.
If you want a list of weird injuries and syndromes and things, that's the place to go. That MHRA yellow card list it's just got everything.
I wonder how sophisticated this monitoring system actually is.
Well, they seem to be accessing anything. I mean, you could ring up tomorrow and say, I had the vaccine and it left some wires in my leg, and they'd record it as being related to the vaccine. They don't seem to. I should know more about this, but they don't. Looking at the figures, they seem to just record everything. If you log something in the yellow card system, it will be recorded. I don't know if there's any investigation.
So it's essentially worthless.
Well, there must be a second stage that I'm not seeing, but the records on the UK Gov website for the yellow card just has everything. Like there were cases of death that were fatal. So 16 cases of death recorded after having the vaccine, and all 16 were recorded also as fatal. But there was an option to have a non-fatal death injury in there.
I suppose your heart could stop, couldn't it? And they restart it.
Oh, yeah, that's getting metaphysical, isn't it?
Yeah, I've not really any faith in VAERS or the yellow card system.
I don't know. I mean, I suppose if you had a sudden peak of, if there were, I think there've been, 6 blood clotting reports that have led to some fairly nasty injuries and at least one death. If you suddenly had 20,000, because how many vaccines have been administered now?
Millions.
20 million or something?
23 million.
Even if you had 20,000, which is a small amount, 0.01% or something, that will be enough to go, hang on, 20,000 people are experiencing blood clotting, pulmonary embolism.
How do they know? How do they know it's blood clotting? Because obviously thousands of people are dying in old folks' homes in short succession from having the vaccine. How do they know that they aren't blood clot deaths?
Well, they don't.
They don't.
No, nothing.
And back to, he mentioned there the spike in deaths in care homes when vaccinations take place. But we just don't know, do we? We just sort of...
Unless you have an autopsy on everyone.
We can't do it. We don't have the capacity.
No.
That's why I don't have any faith in the VAERS system and the yellow card system.
No.
I think when you're vaccinating on the scale that we are, there's no way of monitoring it efficiently.
I suppose it can pick up things like Guillain-Barré syndrome or Bell's palsy and things like that that are non-fatal.
Obvious, yeah.
Obvious, yeah.
Yeah.
And if there were peaks in that, then that's where the yellow card system is handy. Because you can take that data and go, hang on, there is case for pausing this because 100,000 people have got temporary paralysis. I mean, that's an issue, really, even if it is temporary.
Yeah.
Every single person will record a sore arm after having the vaccine. I don't know anyone who will, and that is something that should be recorded as a side effect, and is. But it has no consequence beyond a day. But anecdotally, I've heard a lot of people who felt rough after having I only know AZ people who've had vaccine. People who've had the AZ vaccine, I think, and reports of 24 hours of malaise.
Yeah, I've heard that. And I've also heard people who've had no noticeable side effects whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's, it's a funny one. Can we do some fun stuff?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was only two serious points and dragged it out into.
I've got a couple of clips from, we mentioned Adam Curry before, the No Agenda show that I've stolen from the No Agenda. And I just think these are fantastic. I couldn't resist. If you don't listen to No Agenda, I encourage you to do so, because they find nuggets like this. This is this is the story of how Pfizer drove its bargain with the Argentinian government to supply. Sorry,
Dormammu. Sorry, I watched Doctor Strange yesterday. It comes to bargain.
Oh. This is how the Pfizer, not AZ, Pfizer drove the bargain to secure supplies of the vaccine.
Talks between Argentina and Pfizer began in June 2020. In July, President Alberto Fernandez held a meeting with Pfizer's CEO in Argentina. Guess what followed? Pfizer asked to be compensated for the cost of any future lawsuits. What does that mean? Say someone files a civil lawsuit against Pfizer in Argentina, and if that person wins the case, who pays the compensation? It won't be Pfizer. It would be the government of Argentina.
So pretty standard so far. All the makers have been granted immunity from indemnity from any liabilities, but it gets better.
Now, Argentina had never done this before, but it made an exception. It needed life-saving vaccines, and desperate times call for desperate measures. So Argentina's parliament passed a new law in October 2020. But Pfizer was unhappy with its phrasing. The law said Pfizer needs to at least pay for negligence, for its own mistakes, if it happens to make any in future. Pfizer rejected this.
No, it doesn't matter if we make any mistakes. Carry on, gets better.
It won't pay for its mistakes. Argentina then offered to amend the law to define negligence more clearly, to include only vaccine distribution and delivery under negligence. Pfizer was still not happy. It demanded the law be amended through a new decree. That's when Argentina put its foot down. They refused. Pfizer then asked Argentina to buy an international insurance. What for? To pay for potential future cases against the company. Argentina agreed. In December 2020, Pfizer came back with more demands. It wanted sovereign assets as collateral. What does that mean? Pfizer wanted Argentina to put, and listen to this, put its bank reserves, its military bases, and its embassy buildings at stake as collateral.
Just wanted to take over the country. Might as well just invade.
It's fucking wild, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
So it kind of makes you think then the level of indemnity that they have from the US government and the UK government then. So they must have that indemnity from the most litigious country in the world, surely.
Yeah, because the state, Fauci was quizzed on this by a Mexican comedian this week. And this Mexican comedian did the best interview that's been heard, because, the normal journalists, they won't ask him anything difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things this comedian asked him was about the indemnity. Mm. And, basically Fauci says, we have a procedure he intimated about the vaccine courts.
Mm-hmm.
And, the comedian says, well, what's the motivation for them to make a decent product? They can put out any old shit, and if it goes wrong... Mm. The taxpayers on the hook for it, the federal government. But anyway, this is how it operates. Because let's not forget, the clinical trials finish in 2023. So I just thought it was wild the lengths they'll go to cover their own backs.
Yeah.
Anyway, it kind of reminded me of this actually.
Aurizian, take the princess and the Wookiee to my ship.
You said they'd be left in the city under my supervision.
I am altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further.
Yeah, got them over a barrel, haven't they?
Yeah, Darth Pfizer.
Yeah.
Anyway, got another clip from No Agenda. And this is the upcoming National Geographic documentary.
About Pfizer?
It's about, the race to develop the vaccine to save humanity, the brilliant souls who've put everything on the line in their research and burnt the midnight oil to come and save us and produce the magic vaccine. Here's the trailer for it.
The biggest challenge was the timeline.
How are we going to do this?
We couldn't pursue a vaccine in a normal way. We broke the process.
How many people will die if we don't have a solution?
Mission Possible, the race for a vaccine, premieres Thursday, March 11th at 10 on National Geographic. Paid content created for and in collaboration with Pfizer.
Nice.
It's just propaganda.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Well, it is, yeah.
Can everyone else see this? No. Or am I going insane? Pfizer's paying for the documentary about how they discovered the vaccine.
Well, yeah.
Anyway, sticking with propaganda, the Emperor of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, let the mask slip this week. At a press conference, she was describing her state re-education facilities, isolation camps, and she let this slip.
And I will just reiterate again, this was an individual who had gone through managed isolation. We drum in that messaging around the dangers of COVID pretty diligently for a full 2-week period of sustained propaganda. We drum in that messaging around the dangers of COVID pretty diligently for a full 2-week period of sustained propaganda.
So, sorry, did someone get caught and you have to go through a COVID re-education camp for 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Flouting lockdown.
They have the same thing, whereas when you enter the country, you go to an isolation camp.
Oh, I see. Right.
Like they were building in Canada. You remember we were talking to Grimerica?
Oh, fuck.
And they were putting the tender out for these camps that they can hold people in.
Yeah, we just got holiday inns.
Yeah, and part of the deal is you have to be re-educated with a solid 2 weeks of propaganda.
I wonder if it's like Big Brother, what's the thing called in the Big Brother where they play it on the big screen? I can't remember what it's called.
Room 101?
Maybe. I can't remember the name of the object. It's not called a television, is it?
Telescreen.
Oh, telescreen.
Yeah. You have to sit in your bedroom and watch 24 hours of telescreen.
People do that themselves. They don't even have to be forced to anymore.
I suppose, yeah.
Paid for by Pfizer.
Yeah.
Anal swab tests for.
Anyway, should we do some cronyism?
Yeah. Local news.
Yeah, well, it's Mancock, innit? Mancock's been under the cosh this week.
Oh, God. Slippery little turd.
Yeah, anyway, starting off with, the Department of Health did a $90 million deal with a firm listed in a Chinese hotel room. The Department of Health signed 2 PPE deals worth more than £90 million with a state-backed Chinese firm listed as a hotel room in Beijing. Newly published documents show the heavily redacted contracts have emerged as the government is accused of signing off secretive big money deals with foreign firms despite British companies having tendered their services. Mancock's department spent an estimated $9.5 billion on vital PPE equipment during the first wave as it tried to rush supplies to the NHS supply chain. According to Tussle Market Intelligence, the deal struck with Beijing Union Glory Investment Company Limited.
Oh my God.
Featuring documents which were released last week. The largest amount, $69.9 million, paid for surgical theatre gowns in a contract that began in May 2020. Under the terms, it's a bit like Vader's deal, this. Under the terms, 70% of the contract value was to be paid by transfer through China Everbright Bank within 3 working days of the deal being struck. The company's address is listed as Room 9401A, Guobin Hotel, number 9 Fuwa Street, Xinjiang District.
I wonder if they ever got those gowns.
Oh, my God. Do you know what's interesting about these contracts that are being released? They're heavily redacted. There's no unit price.
No, because it'll be extortionate, won't it?
Of course it will.
Absolutely extortionate. 9.5 billion on masks.
And gowns and gloves.
And gloves. And, you know, they're not talking about sort of respirators and things like that, are they?
Oh, they thought, no, it's just cheap.
Cloth masks you get for £1, like 100.
I imagine a lot of government ministers are going to be having some really nice, all expenses paid trips to this hotel in the coming years.
Fucking hell.
I'd imagine.
Yeah. Can't think of... Yeah.
He's been getting a lot of flack for his relationship with Alex Bourne, hasn't he?
Is this his non-friend next door neighbour?
The guy who owned his local pub in his constituency.
That he happened to have a picture of in his back in his office, but who definitely didn't know I wasn't a friend of.
Yeah, this is the story from The Guardian this week. Mancock in bother again. The former neighbour of Hats Mancock, who was supplying the NHS with millions of COVID test tubes, joked to the Health Secretary that he'd never heard of him during a private WhatsApp exchange. The exchange, seen by The Guardian, suggests Alex Bourne, a former publican who had no prior experience of producing medical devices before he began supplying the government, may have downplayed his relationship with Mancock in public. The messages, which suggest an easy familiarity between the two men, were sent in late November, shortly before The Guardian published a story about Bourne's work supplying the NHS and his links to the Health Secretary. In a WhatsApp message Mancock sent to Bourne about the imminent story, the Health Secretary called the newspaper a rag. Bourne wrote back, "Hat Mancock, never heard of him," before assuring the Health Secretary that his lawyers were all over the reporter in question, like a tramp on chips.
Yeah. If you read the Guardian article, it gives a handy explanation of what that means, if anyone's wondering.
You know, if I was going to set up manufacturing PPE, I mean, it would be pretty handy to have the Health Secretary's number in my WhatsApp group, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you know, I don't mind, because at the time there was that kind of what's it called, Dad's Army kind of spirit or whatever, at the beginning of the pandemic, when we wanted to retool, you know, manufacturing to make things for...
Oh, yeah. Making ventilators.
Yeah, making things for, you know, that we needed, rather than having to sort of import.
Don't tell him your name, Pike.
Exactly. I think that's... Yeah. But anyway, so he did make... That guy, if you read the story, he did make like packaging for takeaways or something like that. Mm-hmm. So he was basically, you know, retooling his stuff to make these test tubes. It's more the fact that he's obviously lied about his relationship with this person, isn't it? That's what it is. He's him just being dishonest. Again,
it's cronyism, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I've said it before and I've said it again. If you want to steal big, steal from the state. Alexander Solzhenitsyn. That's where all the money is.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, you know, is, again, there'll be no unit price, will there? And, you know, I think 50 million was the contracts he signed with him. So, and I think he's had to return 1 million.
There was a massive recall.
1 million test tubes have been returned to him.
Yeah, there was imperfections in the test tubes, or they weren't sealing properly. And then there was reports of him just torching him in his back garden. Just setting fires. These are no good. I couldn't believe that. Can you not, like, recycle them?
No. Acrid black smoke.
Reportedly, allegedly, unconfirmed.
Okay. I mean, he operates his factory, this guy, out. I think his father-in-law or his father has a potato farm, and he has an industrial unit on it, where he has his manufacturing line base. It's a very interesting story.
It is.
If you read it.
Yeah, and don't think that this is a UK problem. This is happening everywhere.
Yeah, and it would have happened. It happens under any government. I'm sure it happened under Labour.
Yeah.
And it's happening to the Germans. The Germans are getting in on the act.
All right, good.
Yeah, you know where we're going to have to go to find out this news.
Oh, don't you feel like that?
DW.
What is being called the mask affair surfaced at the end of February, when police searched the offices of Georg Nusslein, a member of parliament and prominent figure in the conservative CSU party. Nusslein is being probed for bribery. He is thought to have accepted over 600,000 euros by a mask producer to lobby for its product.
I mean, that's just cold hard cash. 600 grand to lobby. That's taking it to the next level. Anyway, he's not the only one.
But the affair doesn't stop here. Nicolas Löbel, a lawmaker with Chancellor Angela Merkel's CDU party, admitted his company received 250,000 euros to act as a mediator for mask purchases. Prosecutors are now carrying out an initial review of his case. Both Nusslein and Löbel have announced their departure from the Conservative Bloc's parliamentary group. But while Löbel resigned from Parliament effective immediately, Nusslein plans to keep his seat.
Don't let a good crisis go to waste.
No. Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Do you think those people actually needed those that 600,000 euros and 250,000 euros?
Yeah, it's just greed. It's greed and opportunism. But
well, if anyone wants us to lobby for anything, they know where to send the cash. PayPal buttons on the AmishInquisition.com.
£5 a month.
And what's happened this week? The US government's just signed a $1.9 trillion relief bill.
I don't know. I was just going to mention that. Did you say? Is it how much do everybody get? Is it $1,500 or something?
It's every citizen gets $1,400, and it only costs $5,500 for that. So your quid's in. It's great deal, isn't it?
I know. Well, it's exactly the same for us, isn't it?
Where do you think all that money's going to go? Into the fucking dirty pockets of these shits. That's where it goes.
Well, the big chunks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where's the other $4,000?
Programs.
Yeah.
Program for this. Program for that.
Road building.
Set up a working group for this program. We need a white paper for this. Blah, blah, blah. Spread it all out.
Quando.
1.9 trillion. Isn't that more than our GDP?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I would say so. Oh, maybe it is about 2 trillion. I don't know. But yeah, it made me laugh. Someone was talking about Bitcoin, saying like, Bitcoin, it's not based on anything. Don't buy Bitcoin. It's not based on anything. US prints $1.9 trillion. What's that based on? Fiat nonsense. IOUs.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I actually missed a bit of the housekeeping,
Oh?
So we had a communique from Brendan of Ireland on Instagram.
Right, okay.
Calling Amish Ben out.
Yeah.
I posted it. He obviously knows that you're an ardent royalist. And I posted a meme to Instagram of the Harry and Meghan interview, and it's captioned with Harry saying, "They're all fucking lizards, mate." Some words to that effect. And what's he said, Brendan of Ireland? "Amish Ben, you're fucking way off. They be reptilian hybrids. They eat babies, man. But no, seriously, they have no empathy, heart, or compassion. Therefore, they are lizards."
Well,
So I said, yeah, the mainstream media's poisoned Amish Brendan's brain. And,
Netflix.
And Brendan came back with, "Oh, we know. He's like the handler on the show. When you get too close to the truth, he'll start glitching."
Dana Scully.
And Brendan thinks you're going to start glitching, Ben.
It's already happening, man.
Oh, dear. That made me chuckle. Hey, you got a producer credit, Brendan, so,
Absolutely, yeah.
Of your week.
We welcome such communiques.
Yeah. Have you donated Brendan, though?
I don't know.
Are you a douchebag?
Sounds like one. I really should have done that. I should have read out that thing in an Irish accent, really, shouldn't I?
No.
But I can't save you if you're not wearing a face mask. That thing.
There's an embargo on accents.
Embargo. All right, shall we move on?
Yeah, go
on. The tragic murder of Sarah Everard has captured the attention of the press, hasn't it, this week?
Yeah.
Yeah, has it all been kicking off or something?
Yeah, there was a vigil. Was it today or yesterday?
Last night, maybe, or something?
Maybe it was last night.
And did it get broken up? Is that?
The Met went in and arrested him. Well, guess what? You know, if you give up your right to protest...
Yeah,
it doesn't matter if it's in a good cause. It doesn't matter the motivation. You've broken the law. I mean, I don't agree with it, obviously. But without sounding harsh, where were these people, you know, back in April last year when our rights were stripped from us?
Well, they're not protesting because of
no,
that.
I know. I'm sounding harsh. But the principle is that all this shit is illegal now. And we've let that happen.
But you don't think like that, do you? This is the thing, isn't it? It's like the fear factor that changes what you're willing to do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've seen it with the OAPs bending the rules now because they've been vaccinated.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, good on them for it.
Your own risk assessment. Listen to Lord Sumption.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So this tragic murder has captured the media attention this week. I think the Green Party peer Jenny Jones may have gone a bit OTT this week, speaking in the House of Lords. Oh my God, I'm on the wrong page. Where was it?
Oh, this is embarrassing.
Oh my God.
Come on, Brendan's going to be back on Twitter now.
Am I? Oh dear.
She's basically said that men should be not allowed out after 6 o'clock or something. And I think she's highlighting the double standards. I don't think she's seriously suggesting a policy in which men aren't allowed out past 6 o'clock in order to improve the safety of women.
Well, she said that. I spoke to my wife about this, and she said, you know, if I was to go... If you had to go and walk across our dark local park, what's the first thing you'd be thinking? I think, well, maybe I'd be worried about getting mugged. She said, well, for me, it'd be, what if I was raped or something like that? So
you might get raped, Matt.
Yeah, no, but that wasn't in my head originally. But I know, it's the type of danger, I suppose.
You have context.
And in the week that the woman, Sarah Everard, was abducted and we suppose killed because remains have been found in a woodland in Kent, I would argue that at the next opportunity for any bill that's appropriate, I might actually put in an amendment to create a curfew for men on the streets after 6 p.m, which I feel would make women a lot safer, and discrimination of all kinds would be lessened.
It's obviously...
She sounds more serious than I thought. I thought she was making like a flippant double standardsy type thing.
Yeah, well, when you first hear it, you think, well, that must be tongue-in-cheek, surely.
Well, I read it and thought, yeah, that is tongue-in-cheek. And to be fair, I did understand where she was coming from if it was a double standards thing, because all the advice has been, women don't go out on your own, don't go out in the dark, don't walk home. I mean...
There are reasons for that, though, aren't there?
Well, I wouldn't walk home, or I'd probably get attacked. But thinking back, when I was younger, I probably cared less.
But it's risk, isn't it? It's a risk.
Yes.
It's not, you know, they're saying we need to live in a world where women can walk anywhere they want at night without the fear of being attacked. Well, that ain't happening. Right, so if you lock up every man at 6 o'clock, it's just going to be all the women and then all the rapists and murderers because they won't obey the law. Will they? It's stupid.
No, and there's still danger for everyone.
Yeah, there's danger for men. I mean, probably the biggest danger of anyone walking alone through a park is mugging, isn't it?
Well, you would think so.
You would think that's the most likely thing. It's very rare. You know, murders are very rare in this country.
Yeah, but I don't know, maybe sexual assault is...
Sexual assault's probably number 2, and that's disproportionately going to happen to women.
Mm-hmm.
Because men are men.
Yeah. And the other thing is,
it's just a fact of life.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was talking to my wife again about this. Most women are going to be less strong than most men as well, aren't they? So there's always going to be a power imbalance that way, or a strength imbalance, or however you want to sort of...
Exactly. If I'm walking through Moor Park on my own, I ain't getting raped unless it's Gina Carano, am I? It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's
my
just
wife.
That's just a fact of life, isn't it? There is a strength dynamic that comes into it.
Yeah, definitely. And you're never going to resolve that. But then, yeah, I mean, the thing I was sort of read was women sort of giving tips. Something started on Twitter about women giving tips to men of how men should behave in order to make them feel safe. I think one was like cross over the road. One was not walk directly behind. Another was, intervene if they look uncomfortable. So I think I probably try not to sort of walk behind women. I always get that kind of sense. If you walk a bit, that's a bit weird, isn't it? Anyway. I probably wouldn't cross over. I'd probably just go ahead of them or something.
You wouldn't go out of your way?
I wouldn't cross over the road, no. I'd if they were walking, tiny little legs and I had to walk past them, then I would do that rather than sort of walking behind them for half an hour or whatever to town.
Would you doff your cap and wish them a good evening as you pass by?
I'd probably just shout, "Man on the left!"
Do you know, some men... seeing a woman walking home on their own late through a town centre or through a park would actually follow them home to make sure they got home okay.
Would they?
Yeah. Not all men are fucking rapists. Some men would actually do that.
Would you do that, Phil?
Yeah.
Is that what you got arrested for that time?
But you see, that's the sort of the quandary, is because the woman would see that as... or may see that as intimidating or be fearful of that. Whereas
that is a bit weird.
Your intentions.
Yeah, you'd have to say, "Am I all right to follow you home?"
I don't know. Would you? You'd probably just keep your distance. Just be sort of keeping an eye on her.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to be. You wouldn't want to make it obvious that you were following it. It's going to a dark place, this, isn't it?
Yeah, this whole idea just sounds weird to me.
I'll just leave her. Leave her and fuck it,
Well, yeah.
If she gets done in on way on, tough. Never mind.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that is a weird thing, isn't it? Flipping it. I never thought of it that way around. But my immediate thoughts is, if a man said to me, I would just think he was being disingenuous and say, why are you being a creep and following her home? Yeah. You know what I mean? That would be my initial instinct, because that's just not something that I would ever consider doing.
Right. I mean, I just think it's sort of common sense to take these sort of precautions. It's sort of, if you can avoid unnecessary risk, then you should take those precautions, whether man or woman.
Well, that last point you said about intervening if someone's, in trouble, if someone's being roughed up or there's an altercation in the street, I'm not going to intervene, I don't think, because the risk is then transferred to me getting stabbed or whatever. I might shout something, I don't know. But why would you put yourself at risk? I don't know. There'd have to be some sort of risk assessment that maybe you do in these situations. I've not been in that sort of situation before.
Crikey, you'd make a shit white knight.
I know, right? I don't know. It's
called virtue. That's the virtuous thing to do.
I don't know what I would do, basically.
It'd depend on the situation, wouldn't it?
Yeah, if it was two lads fighting, I would cross the street.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. That's the thing, isn't it? What if you saw? I can't remember if I don't know. I'm trying to think if something's ever happened where I've kind of said, "Oh, you're right, love." I'm sure that I think there has.
I've never had anything like that. I've never seen anything bad happen to a woman like in the streets, right?
Well, I'd think in that situation, that's where I'd probably
Man up.
Can I follow you home? You seem to be someone seems to be beating you up. Can I follow you home? Across the street, though.
I don't know. Kind of trying thinking about it when you're not in a situation. Anything sounds bonkers.
I mean, I suppose what you could do maybe is phone the police.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's
a non. And you would think that they might prioritise that if you said it was a woman being attacked by a man or something.
I'll probably shout, I've phoned the police. Maybe.
Good luck.
Yeah.
I phoned the police.
About 3 hours.
I mean, it seems to me the policing, this is key to it, because to arrive in a society where a lone woman can travel a park at 11 o'clock at night in complete safety would require policemen on every corner. You would have to be
to feel. No, hang on.
Park rangers, whatever.
Well, no, to feel safe.
Yeah,
because it doesn't necessarily mean that if a woman walks through a dark park, doesn't mean that she's going to get attacked every time that she walks through a dark park.
No,
is it?
Oh, the odds are probably very low.
Very low. But to stop it happening, for someone to be able to feel safe, you would have to have some sort of amazing level of police presence, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally would avoid walking through a dark park.
On your own?
If I could absolutely do that. If I could avoid it, I would.
So would I. I wouldn't do that. I'd, trying to avoid walking home from...
But why? Why would you do that? Because there is inherent risk.
Yeah.
I'm normally smashed if I'm walking home at somewhere and it's dark. So, I'm obviously more vulnerable the more drunk that I am as well.
Yeah.
So you think, best...
God, yeah, after a night out. Yeah. You have to walk to sober up.
Anyway, sticking on the same subject, the Welsh First Minister, Mark Drayford, was quizzed by BBC Breakfast on this subject of the male curfew.
Some people have said sometimes that if there were an area particularly where there were concerns, women maybe being assaulted or feeling particularly scared, that there should be a curfew on men for a period of time. Is that something that you would consider?
No, is the answer. Isn't it? Isn't it?
Well, you would hope so.
Some people have said sometimes that if there were an area particularly where there were concerns, women maybe being assaulted or feeling particularly scared, that there should be a curfew on men for a period of time. Is that something that you would consider?
It wouldn't be on the top of the list of things that we would consider, because it would be at the very best a temporary intervention.
But you would. I'm sorry, to be clear, you say you wouldn't. It's not the top of your list. I can only take it from that you could not rule out that being a potentially something that you would do.
If there were a crisis and you needed to take dramatic action that allowed that crisis to be drawn down, then of course you'd be prepared to consider all measures that would make a difference. But the sort of measure, the curfew measure that you've described, it could only ever be a temporary answer, and therefore it's not at the top of our list. There are other things that we can do and should do, and we'll work hard with our third sector organisations or local authorities in Wales. As I say, people need to be safe and to feel safe.
It would only be temporary. 3 weeks to flatten the curve. Can't believe it's even on the table. But that we've, like I said last week, Lord Sumption, we've broken this convention. Curfews. House arrest. It's all on the table now. Well done, UK. It's First Minister of Wales.
Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Parallels.
Crazy. I don't know.
I don't mean to sort of link this to sort of like the culture wars, but it kind of links into like, I was thinking about this, you know, this people not wanting to live in a world where there's zero risk and zero offence. And I don't think that's possible. Well, it's not possible. And I don't think it's healthy either to aim for that.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson writes in his book about the first book, 12 Rules for Life, about letting kids fall off swings and slides and stuff. That's how they learn risk, how they learn to balance risk. And
well, it's not that. I think it's more as well to do with emotional regulation. If you're insulated from bad emotion, the first time you experience that is going to be earth-shattering.
Yeah.
If you've not had it in your life, if you've not had to resolve negative emotion yourself, it puts you on the back foot.
Do you know what
The longer you leave it as well, the worse it gets as you develop your cognitive function.
Do you know what you're describing?
Oh.
A snowflake.
Well, yeah. I know, but this is, you can't aim for that. I just don't think that's a healthy place to be.
On a related note, the Scottish hate crime bill passed today or yesterday. It's the new hate crime legislation that's been being debated in Scotland. It's passed today. The new crime of this is the wording, stirring up hatred. Stirring up hatred is a crime.
Okay.
Good. How do you define this? It's just nonsense, isn't it?
Case law, isn't it?
And they tried to put amendments forth to make this not applicable in your own house. That was put down. So you can be guilty of a hate crime, stirring up hatred in your own house.
In your own household?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Mental. But, I don't know.
The new normal.
It is the new normal, yeah. We haven't talked about the big Oprah interview this week.
Thank God.
I watched it. Well, I saw the opening credits.
Did you watch it?
And then, I saw the opening credits, and then I woke up at the very end.
Oh, it was in your middle sleep.
It was.
Yeah.
So I missed it. I assume it was all fine, and everyone loves Harry and Meghan, and it's so great.
I told you about the when we were gaming on Wednesday about the conspiracy angle to this.
Oh yes,
yeah.
Teased us, didn't you?
I said
it wasn't the obvious conspiracy that my wife told me about.
What was that angle?
Deflecting the media from the sweatless creep onto Meghan, basically. So putting out, someone was feeding stories to the press about Meghan making Kate cry and, all the rest of the other stuff, so that they weren't reporting on Prince Andrew being alleged paedophile.
And Ghislaine and all the rest of it. That's all gone quiet, hasn't it? Ghislaine is still in custody. Exactly. That's completely plausible to me. That's plausible.
Yeah.
The angle I've heard is that essentially the firm wants Harry out.
Wanted him out anyway.
Yeah, because they may feel that, well, he's the son of Diana Spencer and James Hewitt. No royal blood there. He isn't one of us.
All right.
We need to get rid of him.
No lizard blood.
Yeah. It's not part of the family. Not part of the firm.
That's an old conspiracy theory, isn't it? The Hewitt link.
Well, it's related to the Markle thing. That they've played this situation.
Right.
And played Meghan.
Well,
to drive this wedge between Harry and the other royals.
The other thing that
I like that.
The other thing I heard about this was it was Matthew Wright. Do you remember the Wright? Is it the Wright stuff? It was called the Wright Show.
Channel 5.
Yeah. So you don't do that anymore, does he? It's what someone else. But anyway, he was on something and he said what he can't believe about this whole thing is how much press she got while she was, our royal or whatever she was, and then versus the amount of press that, again, Prince Andrew's had for his things. His car crash interview that was awful. There was quite a lot of press around that. He promised loads of stuff in that. He's not done any of it, he said, which is true. So he said,
testify and give it evidence.
Yeah, not done any of that. No. Because, he obviously had a tap on the shoulder and saying, hang on a minute, you fucking idiot, you'll be arrested for something. And the other thing as well was like the bullying claims with Meghan Markle. How about fucking Priti Patel? How much press did she get in comparison to her? And she's had to pay off her fucking chief of staff $300,000 with taxpayers' money. Plus how many other members of staff that she's fucking pissed off and have also had payouts at our expense.
Yeah.
It doesn't get the same level of attention as...
Yeah, they don't call her Pretty the Barbarian for nothing.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah,
Home Secretary, isn't she?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, we don't get the full story. I think there's other things going on.
Yeah.
So. And
it shields us, doesn't it? It gets us talking about her, Meghan Markle, rather than all the other issues with government.
No, it's all distraction. It's political theatre. It's like the Piers Morgan storming out. That's not fucking real. It's not real life. I'm sure he already had his deal signed with GB TV or whoever it is.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's propaganda. Government, mind control.
3 million.
Sorry?
He was on £3 million a year, apparently, at ITV, Piers Morgan.
It's more than Lineker, isn't it, on Match of the Day?
Yeah, I think he's, just over $1 million. His pay's gone down on loads, actually.
Good.
You get more on the commercial channels because of advertising.
Yeah, and they don't have to publish salaries.
Yeah, because if the licence fee, if BBC was commercial, it would cost you £500 a year. The report came out a couple of weeks ago. They did some reporting. They aggregated all the stuff that BBC puts out. They said if we had to put this, if we're doing this at a commercial level, you would have to pay, I think it was £470 a year. Well, no one would pay it. So the argument is mute. But anyway, I've got an interesting anecdote about Harry from our mate Mallen Baker's YouTube channel.
Okay.
Because Mallen used to work for business in the community, and there was a royal visit from the Prince. And I found this interesting.
The organisation I used to work for, Business in the Community, had the Prince of Wales as its president. And one time, Harry came to visit because his father wanted him to learn more about his charities. Now, all of my information on this is second-hand. BITC and I had an unspoken understanding I should be kept well away from the royal stuff. But the palace advised BITC that in order to keep the young prince's attention, it would be better if they could arrange to have a presentation given by younger female members of staff. And if they wore short skirts, all the better. To my disgust, that was arranged. I know he's grown up a bit since then, but as far as I'm concerned, it seems as though he's married the woman he deserves, and good luck to him.
Whoa.
Yeah, that last comment was a bit spicy, wasn't it? I don't know where that came from.
He must be. I think he's an ardent royalist like you, Ben.
No, he's the exact opposite. He's not. That's why he was kept away from this presentation. He's like not a fan of the monarchy whatsoever. Yeah, but that comment was a bit off colour for Mallen. But it was an interesting story about the. I've taken it out of context, so you know, the link will be in the description for the whole video if you want to watch that video that Mallen did, his news roundup. But yeah, better get some young females in short skirts to give the presentation just to keep the young prince's attention.
I can't believe that they did that. How long ago was that? Like 10, 20? I mean, can't
Even
be that
then
long.
It's this, you know, in the 2000s, you wouldn't have thought it.
Them two piss me off anyway. Because I always bang on about this, but there's no fucking way either of them fucking clowns with the fucking D, C, and B in like fucking, what did he, like art, something else shit, and something else shit would end up. It was a fucking Apache helicopter pilot who, with an A in art, a D in like maths or English, and a C in something else, ends up as an Apache helicopter pilot.
Royal privilege. Yeah. White male royal
it's
privilege.
Just, you know, they can. That's what about them two. That's what pisses me off the most. Is just, you know, well, I fancy flying helicopters. All right, sort it out.
I think the thing that annoys me is that they've left the royal family, it seems, under the pretense that they don't want the media attention and stuff. And then...
all right, yeah, you're talking about them, Meghan and Harry, yeah.
Starting the podcast and then doing the Oprah interview. It seems like, well, they're trying to make a career out of the public profile.
That's the juxtaposition, isn't it? Yeah, that they've got themselves in.
Yeah, I don't know, it's weird. I don't really care. Not really interested.
This is the other thing, is you get drawn into it, don't you, by the tabloids and the media. But he's like, in reality, he's sixth in line to the throne. You know, so... Prince Charles has to die, William has to die, and his 3 children. And then, is it him?
Where's Andrew in line?
Oh, God damn.
Oh, my God, we've gone long tonight.
Yeah, so...
so what?
Well, no, that's just... I'm still a bit angry about them flying helicopters. I was just going to say something else.
If you want to fly a helicopter, Matt, you can.
I just think it's bollocks that they got to do what they want, but you know, or they give their life in service or whatever. Yeah, but the thing that they want to do, not, you know, as a squaddy, the rest of his life.
Yeah, but you know, security risk, PR, all the rest of it.
I don't care.
They have to be shielded.
Well,
didn't one of them famously serve on the front line briefly?
Yeah, Harry did, didn't he?
Harry, yeah.
Yeah. But
and then he went back and retrained as an Apache helicopter pilot, and he went back as a pilot, I think.
You can't have them be captured or anything, can you? That's the thing. They have to be shielded, wrapped in cotton wool to a degree.
Well, yeah, but then Williams does search and rescue, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. Or did?
Yeah, with the Navy.
The Coast Guard, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've left the biggest story till last. Mm-hmm. Should we finish on this? The big news, the biggest story of the week. I'm sure you've heard that Donald Trump is now Earth's representative for the Galactic Federation of Light.
Wow.
Hello, my friends. This is Alien Contact D. Lynol Anderson here with you guys with a special edition episode of An Alien Tuesday. And today's message will blow your mind. We got the best news we've received of 2021. And that, my friends, is Donald Trump has just met with the Galactic Federation of Light, and he was honored to become president of the Human Committee up on Galactic Federation of Light. I know the video says he becomes president of the Galactic Federation of Light, but I meant to say the Human Committee, that division. So we're going to get into what that means in today's episode. But before we do, I just want to encourage everybody to hit the subscribe button. Subscribe if you're new.
Smash that like button.
As I say, subscribe to survive. I got my old channel deleted. Now I got to start from scratch. So if you hit that button, it would mean the world to me, because I cover it all from New World Order, Illuminati, extraterrestrials, conspiracy, a lot more.
Yeah, hit the notification bell. Smash that like button. Yeah, I hadn't heard this. I wasn't aware.
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Exactly, yeah. Right then, shall we fuck off on that note?
Yeah, I'm done.
I'm spent. Yeah. It's gone late. We've gone long. Ooh.
Yeah, it's a 3-hour of that, I think.
Yeah, just read
Lovelace.com.
Sorry?
Yeah, Terry goddamn Lovelace. You've changed me.
Yeah, it's intense.
Yeah.
Read the standing orders.
Read the standing orders. Read them and understand them.
Right, I've shit the bed. I don't know who's coming on next week. I've forgotten.
Dr. Mary Helen?
NDEs?
Yes.
Ooh, near-death experiences.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Compare notes with Ian Lyons, previous guest.
Yeah.
Right then. We'll fuck off into the night. Wakanda forever.
Praise Javelin.
Epstein.
Still dead.
Epstein's still dead.
Do you want to make a phone call? Go for it. I don't mind. Bring it on.
Fucking vegan.
Can't have children with
chest feeding.
Toss Elysium, mum.
I can't save you if you're not wearing a face mask.
A man and a woman.
This is such a crock of shit.
It also holds hold polluters accountable. With the most ambitious environmental justice agenda ever.
The dwarf, the currant, the grape, the cunt, the cripple, and the mother of
Beasties.
From hell.
Come here, goosey big.
Communist.
The
like a Judgment Day and terminating mode, like.